Hey there, folks. I'm Matthew Finkelstein, and it's my pleasure to be introducing to you Mayor Robert McConnell, who will be, in turn, helping to facilitate our discussions tonight. Now, before we get right into it, I want to ask a favor of everyone who's watching to please share this live stream on all of your networks in Contra Costa, in Solano, Benicia, Vallejo, and so that we can get really good reception and exposure. So thank you for that. Now, many of us here on this Zoom have played a part in helping to support our current Mayor Robert McConnell in many of his campaigns, and for many years we're helping him as he played the role of opposition in a city council that was dominated by special interests. He held that position with dignity and manned it with grace. And it has been our privilege to stand by him through many of those campaigns. We are all veterans of those campaigns, and he himself is a veteran. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce my friend and God willing future mentor, Robert McConnell.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and good evening to everyone. I want to say especially thank you for everyone who has helped, not only helped to have me elected, but all the other candidates, because believe me, no single candidate can ever be elected by him or herself. It's totally impossible. And without people such as yourselves, that battle would be truly not obtainable on any level. I have to say that I have either met or know of all of you on this slate. And when I saw these names, I was just tremendously impressed. It's a group of people that I would be honored and privileged to serve with. I know you're all highly capable. I know you're all highly dedicated. And I know you're going to bring your A game to this whole process. So it is truly my honor to share this forum with you this evening. For all of those who are listening to this and may not know all of the candidates, believe me when I say they know what they're doing. They're involved, they're aware, they're sensitive, and they can only do an excellent job for all of us. So now that we've introduced all of the candidates to the public tonight, we're going to move into the questions that were suggested that I be asked. And I will start with one of them, which is maybe a little bit different than what was suggested. And it is taken from the current issue of Western Magazine, which is the magazine that's put out by the League of California Cities. And in a December article entitled Civility as a Topic for What Ails Local Democracy, it points out that government is respected by less than 20% of the people in our nation today. And they attribute that to a loss of civility in the process. And of course, what we have heard and seen going on in Washington, D.C. is probably a prime example of that. They're talking about, of course, civility among elected officials and people who appear before legislative bodies and commissions, such as you will be faced with having to do. So let me ask each of you this question. How would you restore civility to the political process? And we can do that in what, alphabetical order? However you want to do it. So, well, I'll go on the screen. Mr. Finkelstein, you're the first photograph I see you, so you're the lead on this one.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Robert. So first of all, I want to talk about the work that we've done already around the county in encountering hate. And I want to be clear when talking about this, that when hate turns its head, there has to be a zero tolerance for hate. And, you know, there are a few examples of where this happened around town quite recently. I mean, in our own police force here in Vallejo, there were police members that were passing around photos through the police department itself, through official channels, of badges with swastikas on them. They were doing this in the midst of a badge bending crisis, where after civilians were harmed or else would die as a result of their encounters with the police, and police brutality, police officers would bend their badges. It is unbelievable to me that they would do that in the middle of a crisis and pass us around a swastika on a badge through the police office. Like it's something to look at. In any event, the Jewish Democratic Club of Solano, the Stonewall Democratic Club here locally, both wrote a letter about Police Chief Nicolini's abuse. The Police Chief Nicolini passing around the image. In any event, this is something we called out explicitly. And then when there were folks that were throwing up Sig Heils at the Solano Supervisors Board, we were there again, just denouncing hate speech from both of our clubs vocally and wherever it appears. So if we're going to talk about civility, we have to talk about the ability to call out hate speech and have zero tolerance for it, because there is such a thing in this conversation as a non-starter. And California has the highest rates of, the highest number of hate crimes in the United States.
And that's time.
So the next person on the list is Susan Delano. Susanna.
Sure. Oh, Susanna Delano.
Yes.
Yes.
The question was, how would you restore civility to our democratic process?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for having us. It's a heck of a day to ask that question. I think a lot of us are still really reeling from the incredible display of divisiveness and violence, and just evidence of how extremely polarized we've become as a nation. And I think I'm probably not alone in having family members who are on extreme opposite sides in terms of how they make sense of day-to-day reality, and it's really troubling. I think at the end of the day, the simplest answer is relationships. It comes down to dialogue and a knowledge and a willing to talk about things, which in turn is really rooted in an understanding of common community, your neighbors, your community. We need to be recognizing what we have in common. So in the case of today, ultimately the value for democracy over any sort of, tribal allegiance is what appears to be winning out the day despite everything else, but it's hard. And I think in communities like ours in 8014, we're a majority Democratic county. We're a safe blue county in terms of how we're going to vote on the presidential or who we're going to vote into the state legislature. So our battle in terms of civility really comes down to zeroing in on the issues that really are affecting people's day-to-day lives and that can be value driven. So whether it's, police violence that Matthew's talking about, corporate control, refinery control, the role that those dollars play in our politics and our community, there needs to be full transparency in terms of the way that the community leaders are able to engage folks around how we actually want our community to be. So let me kick it to somebody else.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Susanna. We're going to move on to the next person on my screen, who is Carrie Birdseye, followed thereafter by Thomas Bilbo. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations. I'm so happy for your success in Vallejo. You're the right leader at the right time. When you ask about civility, and I unfortunately turned on the TV today and watched the horrible violence at our beloved Capitol, I think our political system is broken right now, and it's because of the lack of civility. And at the very root of this problem is the wrong people running for political office. Politics is not for the faint of heart. And the people that are excelling and getting elected with corporate money, without any transparency, those people don't have the compassion and the sense of community service that our leaders need to have at the very core of their service. So, from the top all the way down to our local city council and school board elections, it can get pretty nasty. And a lot of people see what happened to people like me in 2018 when there was a PAC named against me, funded by Vallejo, the refinery, and state building trades. They see that nastiness where there's lies and there's, outright bullying to, soccer moms like myself that just want to come in and do a good job and serve my community. And they say, no way, I'm not going to get involved in politics. That's too rough. It's too dirty. And we need to restore civility within our political process so more people that care about our communities will step up and serve. And that's why I joined this slate, because these 10 people care about their communities and they're running for the right reasons.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Carrie. We're going to move on to Thomas Bilbo, followed thereafter by Leilani. So, Thomas.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Hold on. Well, hello. So, yeah. What's going on? So I think when we start talking about civility, I think one of the main things that we need to actually look at, like Carrie was saying, is the people who are running for office, plus also the people who are running to represent the citizens within AD 14, and see whether or not they have the moral fiber to represent people within AD 14. I know there are some people running that do not choose to make the hard decisions whenever it comes to a candidate's background and the fact that they have been endorsed wrongly, and they also choose not to obey bylaws, or to abide by bylaws rather, that is a agreed upon set of rules of engagement between us all. And I think those individuals need to realize that that's what creates uncivil or incivil moments, is having those types of things happen. It really makes those of us who are on the receiving end of it feel like victims, because we're not seeing the respect given to the law and to the agreements that we have with one another. And I think bylaws of central committees, bylaws of clubs, bylaws of the California Democratic Party, and bylaws of the Democratic National Committee are all there to make sure that we behave in a civil fashion, and that we come to a common ground, which is what we need to do to make sure that we can move the party forward. Because at the end of the day, our party needs to be more about getting Democrats elected and getting Democrats engaged than it does about personal people getting to feel powerful.
And that's time.
Thank you, Thomas. We'll move on to Leilani. The question is, what would you do to restore civility to our political process? And then we'll go to Brenda.
Thanks for having me, Mayor. And in thinking about the question, how do we restore civility? To protest is our right as Americans, but there is a distinct difference between voicing dissent in the streets and attempting a coup. And we protest when there's a lack of trust in the process, or when we feel that there's an injustice. This attempted coup, however, is in disregard for the electoral process. It's an attempt to subvert law and steal power. So when we think about restoring civility, we need to think about restoring trust. And like others have said here, restoring transparency, accountability, understanding in our processes and systems. And we need to ensure that people understand that their voice is heard, that they matter, and that they can affect change. Otherwise, why would people go into the streets and take such drastic measures? And when change is desired, that those same people feel that they have a seat at the table to have those discussions. Coming back to our slate, we have leaders in this group that have done work to serve the people. And in fact, our slate has a survey out for any citizen of the district to let us know the issues that matter to us. And we have had people that have come in contact with matters, for example, eviction, and we're working to get them the services that they need. So to restore civility, I think we need to have trust in the leadership.
Very good. Thank you very much, Lonnie. And we'll move on to Brenda Crawford, followed thereafter by Susan George. Brenda. You're muted still. Unmute yourself. Make the red microphone go away. Not yet. Got to get the right little button on the screen there. Keep going.
Got it.
There you go.
Okay. So thank you, Robert, and congratulations.
Thank
You know, I've always felt that within every community is the intuitive ability to solve all of our problems. I mean, we have what we need in Vallejo to solve our problems. What we don't have is a vehicle to use to bring us together to decide on how we proceed. And so for a long time, I've been working on trying to bring a model out here called community living room conversations. And it was a model that was developed by Joan Blaze, who's the co-founder of MoveOn.org. And what these community living room conversations do is they bring people from different areas of the community, different racial backgrounds, different age, different genders, and we all talk about what is important to us. And once we get in a room talking about what is important to us, we are really surprised that we have more similarities than we do differences. So one of the ways of regaining civility in the political process is that we need to be able to create the kind of tables where people can come and exchange free-flowing ideas. I just know that once people get in front of each other and are talking to each other, then it's really hard to separate people out and say that they are different. Classic example. At one point, I had a group of friends who were lesbian and gay, and they went down and had a conversation with Jerry Falwell, because at the time, Jerry Falwell was going off and he was really stigmatizing LGBT folks. Long story short, after a 3-day conversation with Jerry Falwell, he made a promise never to discriminate against LGBT people again, or at least not verbalize it. And so I tell you that because if we can break that kind of nut, if we can break open someone who was as rigid and homophobic as Jerry Falwell was, then there is nothing that we cannot do in Vallejo. We just have to let our guards down. Somebody also talked about trust. We have to establish trust. And the thing that is our common goal is that we have to all agree that Vallejo and AD 14 is worth fighting for.
And that's
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Brenda. We're going to move on to Susan George, followed thereafter by Ruskell. Susan.
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the things about civility, sometimes people hear the word civility and you think of, oh, you know, you be nice. Don't ruffle feathers. Don't rock the boat. And really, that's not what we're talking about here at all. What we need to be able to do is have the difficult conversations and maintain civility. And civility is rooted in respect. You don't really have to like someone to respect them. You don't have to agree with someone to respect them, but that there is an understanding that they are a human being and they need to be heard just as you need to be heard. Now, in terms of discussing difficult issues, I think the way forward is actually something that you demonstrated last night, Mayor, at the City Council meeting, and that is to stick to the issues. Keep it out of the realm of personal attacks as much as possible. If you focus on the issues, you have hard conversations about the issues, but you're not making a personal attack. And I think that's something, you know, at this time in my life, I'm just starting to learn. And the other thing is that this group, for instance, we don't always agree, and yet we are able to work together, and we continue to work together. And even with our extended community, it is something that has evolved. So it takes time, it takes collaboration, it takes relationship building, it takes the desire to want to be able to make progress on issues.
All right, well, Susan, thank you very much. I appreciate your answer. And we're going to move on to Russell Yang, followed thereafter by Maui. Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. As a former elected official, having served on the school board, one of the issues we were confronted with was the lack of civility from certain board member who was causing chaos, as well as the lack of civility and professionalism from some establishment individuals in the audience and in the administration. Having served on the governance committee, one of our tasks was we recognize it is a problem that we have to set up much needed procedures that were never created. And I'd like to share a sentence from that handbook, which I was able to find in time, that we, quote, govern in a dignified and professional manner, treating everyone with civility and respect. We have to remind people when we're in the public realm, the civility norms that are currently established, as well as what we can do as delegates is review, whether it be the city of Vallejo or the city of Concord, council meeting procedures and policies of how meetings are governed and public decorum, identify what's lacking and make strong recommendations of what needs to be in there, because many of us on the team have worked in various capacities to promote the peace and justice. I believe we also need to, having worked for a couple council members in the Bay Area, that we need to join the rest of the cities in the Bay Area, that we must stand united against hate. It's a program that was created by leaders in direct response to the sharp rise in the expression of hate in our local community.
Time, Ruskell.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ruskell. And we'll go to our last panelist, Maui Pell. How would you restore civility in our political process? You'll need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. To restore civility in the political process, it's hard because, you know, so many great things were said already. Something that I'm really big on is accountability. I think that it's, you know, we've seen a lot over the last 4 years, definitely all kind of culminating to what happened today. And with that, you know, a lot of times, you know, people would put out a tweet about, you know, how this was, I mean, government officials might put out a tweet about how terrible, you know, this is and how they can't believe this is happening. But it's not enough to just tweet something like that and then let that be it. Like, there needs to be accountability to those words and actions to follow up to ensure that these things don't result in what took place today. You know, I think that it's important also, like what Susan said about, you know, people respecting other people. And that brings me to something else that's very important, which is diversity. And it's not enough to just be diverse, but we have to value that diversity. And when that diversity is valued, then respect ensues. And when there's respect, you know, there's a level of accountability that comes with that. So I believe that respect, accountability, and diversity and inclusion are all things that need to be prime focus moving forward within the Democratic Party, within most institutions, all institutions, not even most. And that's, you know, how I think that civility should be restored. We can't just not speak on things and move forward. You know, these things have to be talked about. They need to be addressed, and people need to be held accountable for what they say, whether that's, you know, some outrageous tweet or, you know, what you're going to do about that outrageous tweet. There has to be a level of accountability.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the second question. We're going to reverse the order, which means, Maui, you get to go first this time, and we'll just go back up the way we were. So this time, each of you have decided to seek this office. I'd like you to tell all of our viewers why you're seeking this particular office, what you want to do in this office, and how you see yourself working in that role. So Maui, please proceed. You're first.
What I hope to bring to this office and being in this position is kind of what I just spoke on. That's accountability, transparency, value of diversity, and just, you know, bringing more voices to the table, because as of now, you know, there's, you know, disenfranchised groups in all communities. You know, it's not just a certain community. There's all communities that have certain aspects that are disenfranchised. In the Black community, one thing that I've seen a lot of is classism. You know, there's a certain group of Black and African American people, or African American people, that have a seat in certain places and have a voice, and they don't necessarily speak for all Black people. One thing that most people who know me know I'm passionate about is Black Lives Matter. When I say that, it's all Black lives, trans, male, female, whatever the case may be, we all matter. So my thing is getting all those voices to a table, giving them a platform, and making sure that all the needs are being served for everybody. So again, accountability, diversity, and transparency.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mai. We're going to move on to Ruskell Kiangyang, followed thereafter by Susan. So Ruskell, why are you running for this office, and what do you want to do in this office?
The reason I'm running is we need to elect leaders who will bring principled, accountable, and experienced leadership to the state Democratic Party. As a Filipino American immigrant, member of the working class, proud SIU 10-1 member, proud union member, 30-year resident of our community, former elected official, and former DNC delegate and Rules Committee appointee, as well as having served in numerous public service roles. I believe that my past experience would be a great assistance that is needed, along with the amazing talent from my fellow teammates here, that we could really bring much needed voice, speak up for the voiceless, especially on the issues that all of us worked on in the past years, from police accountability to COVID recovery to environmental justice, racial justice, to public education, as well as protecting renters, immigrants, and the LGBTQ community. We would be honored by the community to earn your support, as we're unbought and unbossed, and you can count on us to strongly fight for you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ruskell. We're going to move on to Susan George, followed after by Brenda. So Susan, why are you running for this office, and what would you bring to this office?
All right. I have been a delegate to the state party before, and it was a learning experience unlike any other. To be active in how the largest party, probably the most powerful party in the country runs. You know, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. There's a tremendous amount of accessibility that I didn't know that existed. You can be in a meeting and, you know, an official is there or a candidate is there. You go up and you have a conversation and you talk about what's important in your community. So I want to continue that process of how we can bring the needs of AB 14 into the party. What resolutions can we pass? What legislation can we bring forward? What platform planks are needed so that the party can truly represent the needs that exist now, which are only growing in the wake of COVID-19. They are only growing, and there's certain things I think we've realized that there's certain problems that exist, for instance, in our backyard. of with special interests, and we see the damage. We see that it can be as bad as bankrupting a city. So, you know, we can feel trapped with that here, but then you have people that you can coalition build with, you bring these problems into the party, you work on solutions, you work on legislation. What I want to do is be able to take that deeper. And this is an incredible group of people to do that with. And I don't say, I'm not just throwing away compliments. I mean that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Susan. We're going to move on to Brenda Crawford, followed thereafter by Leilani Quesada. Brenda, please. Why are you running for this office, and what would you do in it?
Thank you, Robert. You know, being a delegate, I've been a delegate before, and I've also been on the e-board. Being a delegate is the right combination of being an activist and being a politician. I am not a politician. Never wanted to be a politician, but I am an activist. And I love the activism of being a delegate within the democratic political structure. And so part of why I want to be a delegate is because I want to work within that political structure, put my activism in there, and convene the community around whatever our needs are, you know, and do that within the Democratic Party structure. Being a delegate is like being a foot soldier for the party. We are the eyes and the ears and the hands and the feet are the people in the 14th AD. And so in that role, it is incumbent upon us to really know what areas that they need to have worked on to improve the quality of their lives, which leads into activism, which leads into politics, which leads into policy, and which leads into laws, and then promote change. So it's just a really wonderful kind of quasi-political. I do not want to be I don't want to be a politician, but I love being an activist, and I love being an activist within a political structure that provides the kind of power and access to get things done.
All right, Brenda, thank you very much. We'll move on to Leilani, followed by Thomas Bilbo. Leilani.
Hey, thank you. I'm running because I've lived in this district for over 20 years, and I bring me my experience of working in the judicial system for over 10 years. Also my experience in organizational leadership and in service in the community. I think the beautiful thing about this slate is we have such diversity in experience and in age, and I'm a newbie, and we've got some hard-hitting veterans here, but I have had experience working in the community to benefit children, for example. I have experience in implementing policy, and I understand the impact that unfunded mandates can have, for example. And so it's really important that we inform citizens of changes and also take into account their needs and bring that to the party. Those are the things that I'm looking forward to in running, is being part of the conversation and making it more accessible to citizens, and also being a voice, representing my generation, representing Filipino women, and representing this district. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Leilani. We're going to move on to Thomas Bilbo, followed by Carrie Birdseye. Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, so my answer is really, really quick and easy. It's to make the Democratic Party more democratic, and also to get Democrats who are not involved with the party, except for when they go to the poll, to feel like they are actually part of the party. Too many times, I know from in my own household, plus with my neighbors, they see what I'm doing because I put it out there. I put signs up all over my place. They see all that kind of stuff. And they're like, how do you get involved? I'm like, and to me, that's a foreign question because I've been involved in politics since the ripe old age of 17, going back to Mississippi. So my thing is to make sure that they know how they can get involved and that they are represented and they are part of a party. Because right now we have a lot of people who do not feel engaged, and we have a lot of people who don't feel like the party is actually about them.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Thomas. We're going to move on to Carrie Birdseye, followed by Susanna. Carrie, please.
I want to be a delegate for our district because while we are solidly blue, some of our blue brothers and sisters are bought and paid for. And I want to bring transparency and a voice for our community. Contra Costa and Solano, we really want to understand the needs that aren't being addressed by the Democratic Party and act on them without any strings attached. And I think that's really important, to not be beholden to special interests. And I know that some folks on other slates are, and that's why I'm on this slate, because these are real civic-minded individuals that want to make a difference within our party. When I joined the Solano County Central Committee 4 or 5 years ago, I was astonished at the infighting within the Democratic Party, and we have some real healing to do internally for us to be more effective, locally on up to the federal level. And yes, the California Democratic Party is powerful, but it can be more effective, and that's why I'm running.
Well, thank you very much, Carrie. We're going to move on to Susanna Delano, followed thereafter by Matthew Finkelstein. Susanna.
Yeah, so I come at this, I spent my 20s and 30s in Solano and Contra Costa counties, mainly working on healthcare advocacy. And at first, for my 20s, it was with SEIU representing home care workers who had just organized in Solano County, over 2,000 of them. So really some of the lowest income, most vulnerable folks, taking care of low income elderly and people with disabilities. So advocating on their behalf to raise the standard of care, to get above minimum wage. These are people who are not technically covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. So they're pulling 24-hour shifts with no overtime over and over again, just trying to fight to get the recognition and the kind of institutional commitment that those workers and their consumers deserved. Took up my 20s in this county, and I really got to know the people around here a lot. I sat on the Labor Council briefly around 2010, 11, and also worked on behalf of seniors and the Solano Affordable Housing Coalition. In my 30s, I worked at Planned Parenthood Northern California on the advocacy end, so equal parts kind of policy and electoral work, increasingly getting into politics, especially as we had Governor Schwarzenegger at the time leveling huge cuts on everything, that impacted Vallejo, for example, in terms of its funding for sex ed, which had some really groundbreaking programs early in the 2000s, a lot of the community services that Planned Parenthood provided. So I really cut my teeth professionally counting up those votes on boards of supervisors, on state legislative committees, to see who would really have the backbone to stand up for some of these most marginalized and vulnerable people in the community. So that work really made me who I am, and it's what I bring to any question of politics. I think as I've continued to work, I now work recruiting progressive women to run for the state legislature for those very same reasons. Because I'm more focused on leadership at this point, because I really want to find those women and people in general who are truly committed to champion inclusion and deliver justice for everybody. So the Democratic Party is hugely important to that. And like Susan said, we're such a big state. As California goes, so goes the nation. If we can't get it right here in California, it's the whole country's loss. So a lot is at stake. In terms of driving those democratic values in a more progressive direction, and in terms of finding leaders who truly represent who the people are. So that's why I'm here.
Well, thank you very much, Susanna. We're going to go to our final panelist on this round, who's Matthew Finkelstein. Matthew, go ahead.
Why do I have to follow Susanna?
Why are you running for this one? And what are you going to do? Why this position? And what are you going to do in it?
All right, well, I got a request. I want extra time, not to talk about myself for a change of pace, but actually just to clarify a couple of things. It kind of stitch a little bit of this together for our viewers so they understand a little bit more about what a delegate is. Would it be okay if I talked about that, Robert? Before I talk about
I was going to come to that for the next
one. Okay, in that case, let me plug something really quickly for the viewers, then I'll get to my spiel. The plug my plug is that you have to vote for us at 8melections.com. You have to request your ballot if you're a Democrat, okay? So make sure that you go to ADEMelections.com. You're not just watching this for your health. You're watching this because you have a voice, and you don't want other people speaking on your behalf. You're a Democrat. You deserve to be able to speak for yourself about who represents you. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say about that. But as for why I wanted to be a delegate, now you can begin my time, Susan. Thank you. So the question is, like, how is it that the leaders in the state of California really hear from the people? Well, they're going to hear from the people at the ballot box, that's for sure. But where else do they really get to hear the people? And I guess you could lobby your state senators and what have you. And well, I mean, are they going to listen to you? I don't know. Usually I hate to be cynical, but usually it takes a lot of money to do lobbying effectively. So, the question here is that, like, what was I going to do? What are we going to do to bring our stories forward? And how are the people going to have a voice? And the ADEM elections is a great way to get involved and to really be able to pick a lever and move the energy of the party, into the state. So for me, like, I want to take in the stories of what's happening in our district and the things that we struggle with. And that's going to be environmental racism. That's going to be police brutality. And I mean, if you want to talk about needing jobs, we live in Vallejo. I need a job right now, right? We're in trouble. And the fact of the matter is that like, without people getting involved in the party at these grassroots levels, there's nobody to move their needs forward in a way that can directly impact legislators, in a way that can directly impact whether or not a piece of legislation even gets passed. And I've been doing this for the last 3 years in the partnership without even being a delegate, but I realized how much potential there is. So I want to speak on your behalf here at 8014, and I want to bring our story forward, and I want to do that in combination with some of the most talented people I've ever had the privilege of working with. And we want to do it together. We're Slate. We ask that you vote for us as a Slate. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And let's talk about some of your answers. They're really pretty well oriented towards people who are knowledgeable of what AD 14 is, how the process works. So let's mix it up a little bit. You were kind enough to tell me that the role of the delegates is to elect the state officers, the chairman, 2 vice chairs, the secretary, and the controller in odd numbered years, that you elect regional directors who function as liaisons between the California Democratic Party, the central committees, the Democratic clubs in each region, and we have 3 to 5 assembly districts actually in here. You vote for endorsements of the entire California Democratic Party for partisan legislative and statewide offices in California. You vote for propositions on ballot, recommendations as to whether we should pass ballot measure number 1 or whatever it is. And you also establish the official California Democratic State Party platform every 2 years, and the California Democratic Party resolutions. Now, the 14th district cuts across the unique geographic area. It's both Solano County, especially Vallejo, Benicia, and the unincorporated areas in between, but it spills over into Contra Costa County, where there are large numbers of candidates and different issues in different cities, much more diverse perhaps than we are in terms of numbers, if not population and identity. Many of the people in Contra Costa County probably don't know you, probably have no idea whom you are, unless they happen to stumble across this particular video. So I'm going to mix up the order a little bit here and ask you, how are you going to address the issues of both Solano and Contra Costa County, and how are you going to bring those 2 counties separated by a bridge and an awful lot of differences together? So we're going to start off with Susan George. Susan, go ahead.
When I was a delegate the last time in 2017, 2018, I was on a AD 14 with many people from Contra Costa County. We met regularly. We addressed issues together. We prioritized legislation together. We showed up sometimes at each other's city council meetings in support. We were concerned about the where our concerns intersected and where they were separate. It was it was very good to meet with people from Contra Costa on a regular basis. However, the needs, surprisingly enough, when we were working in the party, were not that different. We were focusing on, well, who do we want to elect as who do you think would be the best representative in our district for the chair of the party, for the different officers? And that would be something where we would discuss it from our different communities. And we would then, usually we would agree on how to proceed, because this person was more focused on the issues that mattered to us. They were less bought and sold by special interests. And that was something that I was surprised that there wasn't that much of a difference in terms of the issues. Now, when it came to specific things up front at a city council meeting, such as what happens in Vallejo with police issues, people would show up at the city council meeting a couple of times on those issues in support, just as we did on immigration issues in Martinez. So my time is up. So it really starts with a conversation of people from that district and how you move forward together, but you have to be in communication.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to go to Brenda Crawford now. How are you going to bring in the interest of these two diverse areas within this district? Can I unmute?
Am I on mute? I'm
Yes, you
unmuted.
are.
Okay,
Yep.
so there are cities in the region that have very similar problems as Vallejo. I would reach out to folks in Richmond, and we've worked with some of those folks already around environmental justice and environmental racism issues. So I would make sure that whatever the issues are in Vallejo and in the 14th AD, that we deal with it on a regional basis, that we look at Contra Costa, which is our neighbor and who has some of the same issues that we have with, toxic pollution, the quality of the air, and all of the refineries, I think they call it the toxic corridor. And so working with those folks around issues that we have in common. We have many more similarities, working on economic development issues, working on issues that address education and equity and mental health services. So looking at everything from a regional basis, because, no one stays in one place anymore. So what's affecting Vallejo is affecting Richmond and is affecting Hercules and Pinole. So looking at those as the issues on a regional basis and reaching out to the delegates in those regions and across assembly districts as well, working with delegates in other assembly districts that are closely aligned with us. But always approaching things from a regional basis, knowing that there is nothing that Vallejo can do in isolation. Our problems are just too great, and we need to have as much assistance from our outside partners as possible. And if we all have the same issues, then we can hopefully come up with a solution that works for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brenda. And then next we'll go to Maui Phil. How are you going to bring in the commonality of both quite different areas and people within this assembly district and address their needs as well?
Honestly, I was born and raised in Vallejo, but I grew up all between Vallejo, Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco. I have friends all across throughout the entire Bay. And one thing that I've learned is, many of my Slate members said that there's not tons of differences. I think that the best thing about this is getting people together, new ideas, fresh conversations to talk about how we can work together and collaborate to address the issues that each of our areas is facing. I know for Oakland, Richmond, they've had issues with policing and stuff like that. And after the state oversight, they were able to address a lot of that stuff. And, that's something that we could bring to Vallejo. And Vallejo definitely has some things that we could probably talk about with them that we've done to help them in their areas that they need help. So I think that, like everybody else said, pretty much just having the conversation going, having, you know, re-energized fresh blood in this arena. I, for one, like Ms. Brenda said, I've never been real interested in politics, but I am interested in morality. And I think that there's been a real blurred line between politics and morality, and a lot of people have kind of stepped on that a little bit. So hopefully we can all start working together, having the conversations that need to be had, and fixing the, filling in the gaps.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mai. Next, we're going to go to Leilani Quesada. Leilani, how would you merge the interests of these two rather diverse areas in the AD 14?
Yeah, thank you. I think that the challenge that's been posed by the pandemic actually lends itself to the challenge of reaching out to the rest of the district, because we're in various stages of lockdown. Everyone's been pretty much forced online. And so that makes it easier to engage then. We can be reached by email, via social media, by phone. My worry, however, is for people who have gaps to that access, either gaps in access to technology or gaps in access to the internet. For example, the library is closed. So what do people do who don't have access to computers? And so I think that will be the interesting challenge, is in seeing how we can safely do that outreach throughout, not just Contra Costa, but throughout the district, and find out the needs of the people who are most underserved, particularly in this pandemic. But that's a challenge that I think everyone on this slate is willing to take on, because we care and we want to help. So yeah, I think that there's benefits to, I suppose, the pandemic, in that now we have a huge online presence, but I mostly worry about people who don't have access to the internet or phones to reach us. So we'll have to be creative in how we do that outreach safely and healthily.
All right, well, thank you very much, Leilani. And Matthew Finkelstein, we're going to go to you. How are you going to address the issues of this quite diverse district and their needs, and bring them together?
Thank you, Robert. And I just want to say that, having been working in the Democratic Party for the last 3 years already, having given plenty of testimony in front of committees, having collaborated with many other activists across the state, one of the most remarkable things about this position is that it's a collaborative role, and you get to organize with collaborative geniuses across the state, people who are deeply committed to their respective districts, and nothing gets done in the party without collaboration. Okay, there's no genius that does it by themselves, as much as I sometimes like to believe. But the point is that for me, like here in Solano, like this is actually a great opportunity. It's one of the good things that COVID has brought about, this latest election by mail, is up until this election, every single election for our delegate elections has been held in Contra Costa County. That means that underserved and underprivileged voters in Vallejo, where I live, and in Benicia have not been able to get across the bridge to cast their vote, to participate in the Democratic Party, the one place that's supposed to serve them. So as much as I am, and I'm going to be clear about this, I am very excited about collaborating with all of my friends from Contra Costa. I'm actually much more excited that they'll have the opportunity to collaborate with people from Vallejo and Benicia for the first time, who have really struggled to try to get a voice in this party. And I'm urging anyone who's listening to this, take the opportunity and vote, because this is going to be a year, if you're in Solano, if you're in Benicia, this is going to be a year where we finally can get good representation, and we can finally adjust these long out of balance scales.
All right, well, thank you very much, Matthew. Now we're going to go to Thomas Bilbo. Thomas, how would you address the needs in this district of such two quite diverse and geographically separate areas?
So I've already covered this, I think, in my statement that I issued with the my joining as a candidate. And my goal is to, when we can, go in person to different club meetings and different Democratic meetings within Contra Costa County. The other thing is to actually, in the pandemic, while we're in this weird phase, but we're elected for 2 years, so hopefully we're not in this phase for that much longer. is to join online. I've already made a lot of inroads into the different clubs that are over in Contra Costa County. I know a few people over there. I've joined them. And then also over in Contra Costa County, I've started looking at the schedules for the city councils and other commissions and stuff that are meeting within the cities and also the county. And so in order to service the Democratic members within Contra Costa County and as well as Solano County, I need to know what's going on in their lives. And I think that's something that on this slate, I'm gonna bring it back to this group of people when we're elected. Notice say when we're elected, because I know the people here want transparency in the Democratic Party, and they want to also bring democracy back to the Democratic Party. And so you're gonna vote for every one of us. And that's it. That's all you have to do. 10 people. You don't have to vote for 14. But I'm gonna bring that back, and we're all gonna work on this together because we're a diverse group of people. We're a slate of people that want to do good for the Democrats within our district. And I think by working together, we're going to cover a lot of bases. Instead of being individuals, we're going to be a team.
All right, thank you very much. And next we'll go to Carrie Birdseye. How are you going to address the divergent needs of this geographically spread and quite diverse area?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that our constituents in Contra Costa County and Solano County share a lot in common. A lot of our communities sit upon water. Many of our communities are home to a refinery. And I think by focusing on science and working towards a clean energy future, I think that's going to benefit a lot of Democrats and people in Contra Costa County. They are facing a lot of the real environmental justice issues that happen here in Solano. They are facing rising sea levels that many of our communities have to address. And so by focusing on what's real and the science and the view towards the future that we want to all have, I think we can find a lot to work on together. And I agree with Tom's outlook and just really learning about what their issues are, where our commonalities are, and how we can rise all of our boats at the same time. Because right now, there's a lot of folks that are beholden to the wrong people behind the scenes. And with this slate, that's not going to happen. And we need to start really addressing these issues at the local level. California's done a good job at setting goals. We have a long way to go to meet those goals, and to meet those climate action goals, we need action at the ground level.
All right, well, thank you very much, Carrie. We're going to move to Susanna. Susanna, go ahead.
Yeah, so I might start out by trying to broker a swap where Contra Costa sends us some of their Trader Joe's and we send them hospitals. Joking, but so there is a little bit of a food issue in Vallejo on this side of the bridge, as is often the case in communities of color. And I know Contra Costa struggled with hospitals with the closure of Doctors Medical Center ago, particularly in West County. So I say that by way of saying I've worked in Contra Costa a lot, before we had district lines that combined us, and now that we do, my office at Planned Parenthood was in downtown Concord in Todos Santos Plaza. So I know enough to know that we have a lot in common. We are communities that is real. We all know people on either side of the bridge, but we don't think of ourselves as the same kind of community. So it's been challenging, I think, for elected officials sometimes to really get to know both sides. But there is a ton in common. My slate mates have already pointed out a lot of them, especially in terms of refineries. The demographics are not that different. So same. We're both commuter counties to some extent, although that's on pause with COVID, but transportation is definitely a concern. that people are thinking about a lot: air quality, education across the board, and creeping homelessness. I happen to know the STD, especially among young people, are pretty high in both counties. So I think there's a lot of ways to collaborate and kind of build on the strengths that one side of the bridge may have as opposed to the other, and maybe learn from the way, for example, Contra Costa has a lot of more protected, parks and green spaces. So I think there's a potential there for some really good collaboration.
Great, thank you very much, Susanna. And now we'll move to Ruskell Kiangyang. Ruskell, how are we going to address the needs of this diverse county and area?
Yes, having worked in not just here in Solano County, especially in Vallejo, but also in Contra Costa County, working for a council member and being a commuter myself between these two counties. One of the things we could do that from joining the Democratic clubs in the two counties, we could also hold, especially during COVID, virtual events in the district, such as like virtual open office hours with your delegates or virtual town hall with your delegates. Having been an elected official myself, plus working for elected officials throughout the Bay Area, that's what we have done, and that's something we can do. In spite of what occurred earlier today, unfortunately, I would also like to propose to my fellow teammates on the slate as probably having like a virtual rally concerning what happened earlier today at our nation's capital, that we could host it as a slate. Hopefully we could discuss this offline. Hopefully we could have this later this week to just bring back the civility and trying to like get a sense to get us moving forward. I'm also a member of our Revolution Contra Costa and outreaching through their membership, for example, if we were to hold a virtual event to hear from the issues that we all share in common, from environmental justice to homelessness to housing, as well as ask for their solutions. We could also work with those communities on legislation when we get elected as delegates, especially resolutions that we plan to submit before the State Democratic Party.
And that's time, Ruskell.
All right, thank you very much. I think that completes this round of the questions. So let's move on to the next one. All of you have mentioned Democrats, Democratic Party, and of course, this is an election about Democrats. As we know, more and more people are declining to a state, they're switching states even, as well as party affiliation. So, as a Democrat, how do you propose to address what used to be referred to as covering the big tent, where everyone within our society could be a part and be considered part of the Democratic Party, which many people who are leaving it are now feeling disenfranchised from? They don't feel like they're part of that group anymore. How are you going to bring them back into the Democratic fold? So we're going to start with Thomas Bilbo on this one.
So, like I was saying, I think in an earlier answer, is the only way that we can do that is to make them feel they're valued and also to feel that they are part of the Democratic Party. And I think we as delegates, and also I think people who are on the Central Committee who were elected at a real election, not just a party election, we need to do outreach. We need to do have contact with these voters and the Democratic Party people, as well as if we go out to, whenever we can, God, I'm missing it, that we can't go to the farmer's market, or at least I can, on a regular basis, and actually have truly engaged conversations. It's always got to be, social distance, but have engaged conversations with the voters, both Democrats, Republicans, and everything in between. And I think that's where we can do this outreach and create a bigger tent that we can actually bring them in. But I do want to say my first goal as a delegate to the Democratic Party is to service the Democratic voters here and to make sure they feel that they are not being not engaged with, disenfranchised in any way. They have a voice in the Democratic Party, and I'm the person that's supposed to make sure that voice is heard.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. I see it's been posted that the question phased out a little bit, so let me rephrase it. The Democratic Party used to be called the Big Tent Party. We have many people who are leaving the Democratic Party, even leaving the state. They don't feel part of the Democratic Party process anymore. So as a delegate, how do you intend to bring them back into the Democratic fold and get them to be involved in this party so that it grows again? So Lonnie, let's go with you on this one.
Sorry, I was muted. I think this
There we go.
comes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's part of the conversation in restoring civility. People would leave the party because they don't feel that they identify with the platform. They don't feel that the platform represents them. Same way that people become uncivil when they don't feel that the system represents them. So I think that, to get people back to the party, we need to speak for the people. We need to share the same values. I think everyone is empowered to choose how they vote. And I think it's actually a great opportunity then that people are declining to state. That, to me, I'm processing that as people choosing to vote based on issues. And so if we are aligned on our values, if we are aligned on what our vision is for the future as a party and as a platform, then I think people would easily come back to the Democratic Party. I think that when we've moved more towards a moderate party, we've lost a lot of people. A lot of people have felt disenfranchised or have felt that their vote hasn't mattered. I think in this recent election, people are starting to realize more and more that yes, your vote really does matter. You can make a difference. But now we need to hold leadership to bring out policies and services that serve the people.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Leilani. Susan, George, how would you accomplish this?
It's a very good question. I think when people don't feel that they are valued, when people don't feel that a party represents them, I think others have already said this, then they are inclined not to continue to participate. The delegates play a really important role in this. You could say it's a part of keeping the party honest, and that's what we should be doing. It is ensuring that the party leadership and our legislators is actually in contact with their constituency beyond just election time. It's ensuring that that needs are truly being met. Listen, now we face what could be called, I don't know, there's a very long history, but what could be called an unprecedented time. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Hopefully we're coming out of it soon. This has caused incredible economic instability that we haven't even realized yet. Additionally, we see the rise of right-wing extremism. This is where the Democratic Party has to realize, look it, we've got big problems to solve. And we need to solve them. We need to resolve them. We have to stop infighting as much. Of course, we're not going to agree on everything, but we have to come together to address the real problems: economic stability, racial justice. We see that in Vallejo. We need to address climate change, of course. This time should be a real wake-up call for prioritization and focus. And if we address people's needs, they're going to want to be involved.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Susan. We'll go to Carrie now. Carrie?
So one thing that I'm always looking for the silver lining, and the silver lining in the dumpster fire that has been this Trump administration is that it woke people up to how important being involved in who's representing you, whether it's, at your city council, all the way up to the top. A lot of butts were taken off of the sofa because we have seen the worst leadership in our country ever. And so people that usually say, oh, I don't need to get involved, the people that, have the energy will take care of it for me. No, that's no longer the case. And so right now, there really isn't an alternative to the Democratic Party, in my opinion. The Trump administration has ruined so many environmental regulations, rolled back so many protections for the community that we've seen the Bernie bros come back and vote Democratic. They have to. And what I'm filled with right now is hope that our new administration will not be so careful. We have to build back better. And that means, addressing the serious dysfunction of our economy and the inequities that brown and black people have faced. That's all out in the open right now, and nobody can ignore it. From the most conservative Democrat to the most radical, Bernieite. All of us have to work together under the Democratic Party to address everything that has been wrong and has been laid bare by this pandemic. And so I don't think we're going to have a problem working, on the spectrum with people that want to make a difference.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Carrie. Now we'll move to Susanna. How do we regrow the Democratic Party, get everybody back into the Big Ten?
Sure. So I have a lot of conversations like this, and I'm sure you guys do too. I think there's a lot of cynicism out there, a lot of it well-founded, and there's a lot of permission structures, frankly, to opt out. So I talk to a lot of people who kind of on, this is my one issue, this is my one beef, and that's going to be my ticket out of town as far as participating with the party or with, the larger electoral system. So, I talk to people a lot about, so, okay, your issue is campaign finance. Totally agree. Our system is completely corrupt. It ruins everything. It makes our democracy worse. We have to change it. But there is no way we're going to change it until we change who the people are who are making the decisions. And that's going to take all of us. Same thing for the fact that we have a two-party system. It's what we have right now. If we want something different, we have to change it from the inside. And history is full of examples of how changing things from the inside ultimately pays off, even though it's hard and it goes on forever and ever and ever. So I think pointing out those kinds of things, local wins do more than anything else to engage people. If there's a local issue, you might not think of yourself as someone who cares about the issue area or the politics, but if you care about getting that Trader Joe's in your neighborhood, for example, and you get involved and you win, or you come this close and you come back to fight again, that matters. And what also matters in that calculation is who's leading those fights, who are the elected people in the party, do you see yourself reflected in them? And I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, for me, I answered the question before about why I wanted to run for ADEM by talking about my own background and what motivates me professionally, but it really wasn't until Kimberly Ellis ran for party chair in 2018. I worked with the party for 20 years. But I had never thought of what role do I want to play as a person, as a community member, as a mom, as an individual, until she ran, someone that I knew and respected tremendously, whose values I really identified and saw as ideal. It wasn't until then that I imagined my own deepest goals and the people I care about's goals as something that we could achieve via the party if we can only, get enough people involved and work hard enough. So those are my basic approaches to that.
All right, Susanna, thank you very much. And next we're going to move to Maui.
Thank you. Like again, all my Slate members definitely had a lot of good points on this. For me, I just like to highlight getting people involved. One of the big things is, people feeling disenfranchised. For myself, like I was somebody that started out as protester, activist, and after hitting my head on the wall for so long, it was like, what do I do next? So I can speak to feeling disenfranchised and not wanting anything to do with either of the parties. However, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And, getting involved and understanding that there's a lot that you can do, and a delegate position is the first step to doing that. So one thing that I think is, or the few things I think are important, is communication. So communicating with the community, all of the community as a whole, not writing people off because, they look like me, I've got dreads, tattoos. A lot of people don't expect to, get or have to listen or, receive what I have to say. But, everybody has a story and everybody has experience that's valuable. So that goes into like educating the community about what delegates do, the importance of being a delegate, the changes that can be influenced from that, and how you can, restore resources to those who are in need of, whatever the resource may be. And like Martin Luther King said, rioting is the voice of the unheard. And we've seen over the last few years, time and time again, there's been riots, protests, because people feel unheard. They want to be heard. They want their needs met. And it's time that those needs get met. So we come back to the accountability. So, teaching people that, in these positions, the right people can hold those people accountable. And that's what I plan to do in this position, is ensure that there's a sense of accountability and that people feel comfortable and confident in this party and feel like they're a part of the party as well. The party is not just making choices for them, it's making choices with them. And that's what I think is the most important part of this delegate position. And I hope that, I'm chosen and can move forward with it.
Well, thank you very much, Maui. I appreciate it. Matthew, your turn.
We're so lucky to have you, Maui. We're so lucky to have you. So there's just so many things that I want to say to this problem. Do you feel disenfranchised from the Democratic Party? Are you kidding? Welcome to the party, right? Like that's how I felt going into this thing. But I can't for the life of me, as much as I may sometimes feel like I want to, can't ever really like poo-poo the Democratic Party because of just how much of an impact, that we've been able to make in it over the years. I wouldn't keep with this if I didn't think that there was something to it. There's definitely some problems in terms of disenfranchisement, and we got to talk about it. We have to have real conversations about this. Amongst other things, like the Democratic Party has been staffed largely by like an aging population that can no longer continue to volunteer on its behalf. There's also a younger generation coming up, and the Democratic Party is fueled by younger generations coming up, but not this generation, because we are broke. And I'm talking about like, people in their 30s, their 40s, people like, well, maybe I'll talk a little bit more about myself. But I'm not going to get too into that. The point is like younger folks, real like 20s, they're not going to volunteer like they used to in the Democratic Party. And I can actually list the positions that are paid, and on both hands, maybe out of the thousands and thousands of people that volunteer, that's not acceptable. Also, we got another problem with top-down authority. Chair in the Democratic Party, this is ridiculous. The chair appoints unilaterally the heads of every single committee, has more power than any chair in any organization a quarter of its size in the state. We have to democratize the Democratic Party, and it's a shame to say so. These are existential issues. But now I got to tell you about what I find truly disenfranchising. Let me tell you something. It almost ended up with me skipping out. Like, I attended a meeting of the Solano County Central Committee in which your endorsements were given, and that is to say the endorsements for the mayoral race, and also given to Steve Young, and then 4 days later, without having putting it on the agenda, without having duly noticed the meeting, they decided to arbitrarily revote those endorsements and give it to Hakeem Brown. I'm almost done. I have a question for Robert McConnell. I would like to know if that made you feel a little disenfranchised, maybe we can do something, deal with this transparency issue in the Democratic Party and illegitimate endorsement processes arbitrarily initiated by selective special interests?
Well, that's a great question, but we still have two more panelists on this round, so let's give them an opportunity to weigh in. And we're going to go to Ruskell. Ruskell, Big Ten, how do we do it?
Yes, I've been there before. Right out of high school, the first time I was able to register to vote at 18, I was a Democrat. And I remember attending my first Solano Central Committee meeting, which was over 10 years ago, with Kay Woodson, who lived and worked in our district. And that's how I met like Dan Healy to many of the people that I know now. And then years later, I just felt I was not heard with the Democratic Party. So I switched to Green Party. And then now I'm glad to be back in the Democratic Party. And having those experiences, being involved in the past, what we can do is, as we talked about our outreach methods and ideas earlier, as to have it as one of our, if we were to do a virtual town hall, have that as one of our discussion and hear from our constituents, what can we do better to get more people back in? In addition, since we talked about civility earlier, we need to change whatever policies and procedures that have caused many of our friends and allies to leave the Democratic Party in the past, because many of us here on our slate have the experience that we could fight for. And having worked with like Bobby Lopez of AD 15 delegate, or Barisha Spriggs, an 80-20 delegate, working with other delegates throughout the region on better outreach, better recruitment, and understanding the needs of people, we hope to make a dent in this area.
Good, that's time, Ruskell.
All right, thank you very much, Ruskell. And we're going to go to our last panelist on this question, Brenda.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, unmute. I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay, thank you. So the Democratic Party actually needs to think about a systematic leadership and generational change. My days in the Democratic Party, the days ahead of me are a lot shorter than the days behind me that I've been involved in the party. And so I see my role right now in terms of the big tent issue is being a mentor and providing the kind of guidance that folks need, these young folks need, in order to become effective in their role as democratic advocates. I want to make sure that as those of us who are in our 70s and aging out of the Democratic Party, that we leave this rich knowledge that we have in somebody's hand. And so I want to work with young people. I want to mentor young people. I want to mentor folks in the 14th AD. I don't know, I think I have a little bit to offer, maybe not, but whatever I have to offer, I offer it to you freely and from the depths of my heart. And so I think that we need to have a lot of us old folks who have been around for a long time, engage in a strategic, systematic leadership transition and leadership succession training for folks. I did not know what Matthew said about the power of the party chair, but that is something that we need to deal with as well. But really, the future of the Democratic Party lies in the folks who are on the slate who are going to be around for a while. And so my contribution to expanding the party is just to take somebody's hand and walk with them as we go through this door for the next 2 years.
All right, Brenda, thank you for your wonderful words. I see we are about an hour and a half into this discussion, and we finally gotten down to a first name basis. Getting to know one another is a good thing, but I don't think we want to tax the patience of our viewers too greatly. So I think we probably should sum this up right now. And let me ask you, Mr. Finkelstein, since you're kind of the organizer of this thing, how we go ahead to make sure people actually can vote. I mean, we can't walk down to the local precinct and pull our paper ballot out. You got to register online. You got to get an ID number. You got to have something mailed to you. Why don't you walk us through the process for those of us who maybe aren't right on top of it?
Well, hey, as of this recording, we are at 6. If you are watching this and it is after the 11th, it is now too late for you to order your ballot. So it is urgent that you go to ademelections.com. That's ADEMELECTIONS. ademelections.com. That's ADEMELECTIONS. And if we highlight Tom, it's written on the back of his thingamabobber. I don't know what the fancy word for it is, but the point is that everyone should participate in this election. Everyone who's a Democrat already. If you're not already a Democrat, try to register. No guarantee that your registration will get through, but try. And then order yourself this ballot. And then as soon as you get it, I want you to go to 8014progressesforchange.org, or I want you to go to our Facebook page. Just Google any of us. It'll be on the closing credits. You can wait for it. You waited this long. Anyway, the point is that once you receive your ballot, we want you to vote for the 10 candidates that Robert McConnell endorsed tonight. That would be everybody, including myself, especially myself. And then after you've done that, do not use your remaining 4 votes. We're asking you to bullet vote for us and these candidates only. Now, don't get me wrong, you can vote for who you want to, but that is our wish list that you do that, because that ensures you don't elect anybody over us. Your vote might bump one of someone not on this slate above someone else who already is. So we want to make sure to conserve all that we can. We thank you very much for your vote. We're very grateful for it, humbled to have it. And Ruskell is raising his hand.
Yeah, and just want to add, we as a team, we have no ties to any big money special interest. We're totally grassroots, and since we're not beholden to special interests, we're here to serve our constituents in our assembly district. That's why you could count on us to fight for you when elected.
All right, thank you very much. Thomas, you're kind of our tech expert here. Anything we need to be more aware of to make sure our vote gets in and gets counted? You need to unmute yourself, Tom. Tom?
I'm very technical. I can't even unmute myself. But so you got to request your ballot by the 11th, and we're asking people to do it before 5 o'clock because there's probably going to be a rush. And knowing how the Democratic Party works, don't tax the technology too much. So get early. Request your ballot today. ademelections.com. It's right up here. And you can get your ballot. And then the minute you get it, go to our website or our webpage, and we've got a fantastic Slate flyer that I just think is lovely, and it has a great deal of beautiful people at the bottom that have endorsed this, including Robert McConnell. Thank you very much, Mr. McConnell. Including the former mayor of Vallejo, Bob Sempine, the current mayor of Benicia, Steve Young, and our lovely District 2 supervisor, Monica Brown. And we also have the progressives, Progressive Democrats of Benicia. I'm going to really mess that up. And then also Voices of Vallejo. And there's going to be some other ones coming as well. But you take that Slate flyer and you can just mark those names right there. And in fact, most of us are all towards the top of the ticket because you can tell who was eager to serve you by the people who registered first. And if you look at the listing, that's most of the people on this slate. In fact, I think all of us are up above any other slate because we didn't wait to the end. So take the ballot, take the slate flyer and do that. But remember, before you do that, admelections.com, right there.
All right, I see that on the screen. And did I hear you say that we're actually going to get a paper ballot in the mail that we have to send back?
Yes, you get a paper ballot, and they are supposed to be postage paid. Susan, am I correct in that?
You are correct. They are going to be postage paid. They are expected to have your unique number printed on the ballot. However, do save your confirmation registration email to make sure that that number is there in case it didn't get printed on the ballot, but they are expected to be. So should be very easy to send them back. And did we give the deadline date?
Yeah, the deadline date that we're asking for people to send them back is January 20th. And the reason we're asking you to drop that in the mail right now on the 20th is so that, you know, the Trump people have really messed up the postal service, and we're going to have to claw that crap back too. Like Carrie was talking about, we're going to have a ways to do that, but get it in early. So the minute you get the ballot, fill it out. Remember, I got to get my fingers right. Progressives for Change, AD 14 Progressives for Change, get our slate card and fill it out, fold it up, put it back in the envelope and send it as soon as possible. But we're asking all of our constituents that are going to vote for us to at least get it in the mail by the 20th of January. That way there is no chance that your ballot won't get to the Democratic Party by the 27th. Because that's the thing. It's not if it's postmarked before the 27th, it's if they receive it by the 27th. That's something else we need to work on, is the Democratic Party needs to leverage some technology and go to online voting. If a small club like Stonewall Democratic Clubs can do online voting securely, tell me if the Democratic Party can't. Anyway, more access, more democracy. Let's make the Democratic Party truly democratic.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. All we have to do is remember to actually vote. How easy can that be? I mean, you didn't stamp it for me? Come on.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, no, it is stamped.
Martin Luther King Day, we want to make sure it's in the surface snail mail, and we've done our jobs. So to all of you who are on this panel tonight, I want to thank you. It's wonderful to get to know you even better, to hear your individual views, because we are certainly very humanistic, and I think that shows. To those people who are watching that may not be involved in the democratic process or the Democratic Party, or are just coming across this for the first time, I want to address that concern by responding to a question that Matthew asked. Did I feel alienated? Well, you know, I started off by a motivational speaker who said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That moved a whole movement. And then, of course, my country decided they could do something for me by sending me to fight a war, which I did. And when I came back, there was a moratorium and I was a monitor for it. I stopped some guy from going into the state capitol. I'm looking at him as the state police are hauling him away and thinking, what do I care about this place? I would just as soon drop 3 mortar rounds down the dome of the Capitol and be out of there before the first one hit. Now, was that alienated? Yeah, I'd say it was alienated. It took me a long time to get back to believing in this process. And I've come to realize that even though you vote, it's not enough. You've got to have a voice. You've got to make your feelings known to your friends, your neighbors, people on this panel, at your city council, because this is where local government is where the rubber hits the road. And if we don't have that involvement, we will lose a democracy. We will lose our lifestyle. And Brenda, you talked about passing the torch. You know, when I heard Kennedy talk about passing the torch, I thought he was talking about passing it to me. But now he was talking about passing it to the World War II generation. But now it's time to pass it on to those who are in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, because they will replace us and move through this And there was an awards line that I once heard that has always stuck with me. And that line is, from the ranks he has come, and to the ranks he will return. We all do our bit to try to make this country, our society better. We do it temporarily, for a short time, for a long time, but it's always temporary. And we will return to those ranks. So thank you for stepping forward to become a leader. I commend you for it. And I've certainly learned a lot, and I certainly enjoyed it tonight. So thank you very much for having me as your host.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, Abba. Well, I gotta say, I gave McConnell a script, and guess what?